Hi, and welcome back to another video. And today I will be doing my April 2025 governor election predictions video on where I believe the governor elections for this November stands as of right now, and where I think, these two elections would be if they were held today. And in my last prediction video for these, governor elections, I predicted that the Democrats both take these, these governor seats. Now, do I believe that's where they stand right now? I will get to that in a moment. And as I've always, I always do Virginia first because why? Well, because Virginia is the much more important race. Virginia is a bigger state. It is the race that usually we look to, because Virginia is much more competitive, and we've seen that. We've seen that in the past here, where if we go to 2021, right, Glenn Youngkin only won his race by less than 2 points, 1.9%. If we go to 2017, Northam won his only by 8 points. And that's only because, right, Donald Trump was president in 2017. What happened in 2021? Well, Joe Biden was president, and it went in the opposite direction that the president and the incumbent party wanted. Virginia is really, Virginia and New Jersey, but mostly Virginia is the first showing of how the public are feeling. In 2021, it was a clear frustration against the Biden administration and the incumbent Democratic Party. In 2017, it was the clear frustration of the Trump administration and the incumbent Republican Party. I mean, the same could be said if we go back all the way to like 2009 with Barack Obama, right? Look at that. A 17-point win for the Republicans. A 17-point win. The American people were expressing to the Obama administration and the incumbent Democratic Party that they were still frustrated with the economy. They didn't think things were going in the right track, and that they were very upset. And we could be seeing the same thing in this upcoming, Virginia governor election. It could go the way it went last time around, except it probably, if we have a repeat of 2021, that means that Virginia will probably go in the favor of the Democrats, which is what I'm expecting to happen. As of right now, I do predict that, Spanberger will probably win Virginia by a wide margin. I mean, what we saw in Wisconsin in the Supreme Court justice race was a clear rejection of Elon Musk and his involvement in American politics. And people were very frustrated with Elon Musk. They were frustrated with Doge, and they came out to vote. It was a clear rejection. People are very frustrated. And if that type of, momentum in the Democratic Party continues, then we could see something like that happen with the Virginia governor race or even the New Jersey. And I will get to New Jersey in a second. But Virginia is so much more important to focus on because it is extremely competitive, and it is a clear picture of what the American people are currently feeling on the incumbent party and the president administration. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this year's election, the campaign, and everything else that happens around it. Now, unfortunately, because this is an off-year election, we don't really get that much polls. And with the canceling of 538, I've been forced to use Real Clear Politics, and I have explained in the past I really do not like doing so because of how how biased they are towards the right. But nevertheless, I have been using them, and I have been pumping out content for you guys. But unfortunately, on Real Clear Politics, we do not have they have not released any Republican governor polls. But when it comes down to the Republican bias I was talking about, you could see that with Trump's approval rating, right? You have Rasmussen, who is very, very biased towards the right. And you have them constantly putting up Trump plus polls. They've probably had one poll that had Trump in the negatives. Now, regardless, we've actually had other pollsters that are much more unbiased that actually do have uh, polls where Trump is up in the positives, like Harvard Harris, very good pollster. But you do have a lot of the really respected ones like Reuters or Morning Callist, or Atlas, who got the presidential election of 2024 right. Actually, they don't have Trump up, but still, you still have some good pollsters in here, despite really bad pollsters like Rasmussen or others. But I usually look to Morning Consult, Reuters, Atlas Intel, CBS, Quinnipiac, those are good pollsters. Those are good pollsters. And a lot of those pollsters, especially Atlas, had Trump up, in the polling for the 2024 presidential race. And they were right? Trump won by a very close margin, about like 1.5%, or somewhere around there. And they were right. They were right. But Trump's approval rating is very interesting to watch, and it has been very interesting to watch. As I'm sure it's going to get either much more worse, or it's going to be very interesting to watch, because what we've seen already is Trump has been able to take his +6 approval rating and completely demolish it within not even 2 months. Not even a month and a half. He destroyed it a month and a half. And I wouldn't say he destroyed it, but the American people clearly disapproving of what President Trump has been doing just in a month and a half of him being president. We went from them giving him a +6 approval rating to now, about 3 months later, he is now in negative 4. Negative 4. Negative 4. That is a -10, in the wrong direction for his disapproval rating. In a way that, clearly the administration does not want it to go. Not at all. And if this continues, like I've said before, it's only going to hurt Republican candidates. And we saw that in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, election, where the liberal candidate, or the candidate that, aligned themselves with the Democratic Party, won by 10 points. And then the conservative candidate that, aligned himself with the Republican Party lost that race by 10 points. It was mostly, I'd say it was more a rejection of Elon Musk than the Trump administration, but still, Elon Musk is in the Trump administration. He's an employee, and it was a clear rejection of Elon Musk, people, pushing their frustrations on Elon Musk. And if stuff like that continues, it is going to be it's going to get very bad for this administration very quickly. And we're already seeing very, very negative turns. All these stories like the Signal Gate and the new stuff about Hegseth that's coming out already. And we'll see how these new polls come out so far. And we've only getting some polls that are coming out. We haven't got any post the new story of Signal Gate. So that'll be interesting to see. But the last one we got was a -6 approval rating. And right now, Real Clear Politics has the average of Trump's approval rating at -4. -4. He's at 46.3 approval and 50.7 disapproval. Now, this is actually not as bad as you think it would be if you compare it to Biden's approval rating, if you compare it to Obama's. They have had much lower approval ratings, including Trump in his first term. He had a much worse approval rating than this. But you cannot deny it is going in the wrong direction, a direction the president doesn't want it going in. And like I said before, if it continues to go in this direction, then it will only get worse. And it will only harm Republican candidates. But, like I was saying, Real Clear Politics, there are some Republican bias polls. And unfortunately, Real Clear Politics has not released any Virginia or New Jersey governor polls. So I am forced to be using the Wikipedia polls here that you can see. Even these aren't really done that, recent. Because this is an off-year election, and you can really see the difference here. Now, we are still early in this governor election. Right before, it was only September of 2023. Nobody was going to be thinking about this election in September of 2023. But this was around when Spanberger announced her campaign. In late of 2023, very early. But she was able to have this campaign ready for when they really got in the swing of things. But the interesting thing to notice about this poll is that 47% were undecided this time. Because, like I said, nobody was thinking about the Virginia governor poll. However, that 47% really, loses that big lead, or the 47% undecided, drop to 12%. Once we get into, September, where we have 39%, where both Spanberger and Sears, who was the Republican lieutenant governor, was tied, as we are in September of 2024. Now, it is only because in 2024, right, the American people, or the voter base, was trending very, very conservative. But now that Trump has been president, and now that he's been doing all these things, I assume, or I predict, that the American people will once again, like we saw from 2017 to 2020, that the voter base is, the overall voter base is probably going to be turning liberal, or the people who are going to be mostly politically active, or the people who are going to be showing up to vote will be very, very liberal and very, very progressive. So we are now seeing, right, as now this is after Trump is, he's elected and he's saying all this stuff, but he isn't president yet. This is December of 2024. And the first time, if you don't count the undecided one, Spanberger takes the lead for the first time in December of 2024. Now we get to January of 2025. Biden is still president, but Trump is just days away from becoming president. And now you still see Spanberger with a lead. Still, it is shorter than what she had previously as the 3-point win as before, but still she leads. Now we get into, January 6th, January 13th, we're getting closer. Trump is still saying all this stuff. Spanberger has a wider lead. Now we get into, between December 2024 and January of 2025. Still, Trump is still not president at this time, but Spanberger's lead only increases. Because Trump is now the only one gaining the political spotlight, right? Biden was leaving office, Harris was leaving office, the Democrats were silent, and the only one really making any noise was the incoming president of Donald Trump. And with that being so, with all that happening, you have Spanberger really expanding her lead because Trump is getting so much attention, and none of it was positive. Absolutely none of it was positive. Now, in January 18th to January 20th, 2025, this was between when Biden left office and Trump came in, we actually have a tied poll. And I remember, reporting on this poll. This was a tied poll between Sears and Spanberger, because this was the start of the presidential transition between President Trump and former President Joe Biden. We had this tied, and we do have, the 15% undecided. So there's still 15% of people in this poll said, I don't know. And then 5%, a very small margin, said none of these choices, not even the undecided. However, you get a month later into this administration, February 17 to February 20th, 2025, and you have Spanberger leading Sears by 15 points. 15 points. It's a plus 15 shift in Spanberger's favor. And clearly something the Sears campaign does not want to see. And now we also have our latest poll here. From February 26th to February 28th, 2025, 600 people, in this poll, a 4-point of margin of error. We have Sears at 40%, Spanberger at 46%. And since then, we have not got a poll, or it hasn't been released on the Wikipedia page. But I do believe it's since February, we really haven't gotten a poll here. And Spanberger, still, for this entire time, has led every poll, even the tied ones. Well, what I'm saying that is Spanberger hasn't, it's not that she's led every poll, it's that Spanberger hasn't, trailed in any polls. She's either leading or she's tied. Or it's early and the undecided has a much bigger margin than Spanberger. But as we've gotten closer to this election, we've seen that Spanberger's, polling base going from 27% to 46%. And the undecided going from 47% to 14%. More people are making a decision as they get closer. More Virginians are getting, making their answer heard as we get more into this election. Democrats, Republicans go from 47%, maybe only 26% back Sears, and then 27% back, Spanberger, and now we go to 40% backing Sears and 46% backing Spanberger, and only 14% remain undecided. And in this poll, apparently nobody chose other. I think this is the first poll. No, it's the first poll since December of 2024, where a clear majority has made up their mind. And that majority is going to, is backing Spanberger, 6%. And we have a 4% margin of error, which puts Spanberger still in the lead if you apply that. So, yeah. And this is why I continue to say, and I continue to believe, that Spamberger will probably come out on top. Now, we are still a long way to go, but as of right now, we still have, some, predictions from these pollsters. The Political Report said it was a toss-up as of December 6, 2024. And now, as Inside Elections, as of February 6, 2025, they believe it's tilt D. And, which would be a flip. However, I disagree. I don't think it's going to be a tilt D. I think it is going to be likely. As I said in my last video, I think it's going to be likely. Spamberger won't have this blowout, but she's going to win by very big margins. Now, as of New Jersey is tricky because we still have a massive primary poll. Unlike the Virginia governor race, right, the nominees have already been chosen, right? Sears, the current lieutenant governor of Virginia, is the Republican nominee, and Abigail Spanberger, the former Democrat representative, is the Democrat nominee, who, has a lot of momentum on her side. These nominees have been chosen by the Virginia Democrat and Republican state parties. They have chosen. There was this Republican challenger for Sears that has already dropped out of the race, and they both are going to go into these primaries unopposed, win them by 100%, and that's going to be that. But New Jersey is much more complicated because you have a lot of Democrats, jumping into this race to succeeding the current, incumbent Democrat governor who is ineligible to run for a third term. And it is really hard, to look at all these candidates and say, okay, I think this one's going to beat the Republican. But like I have said before, I do believe that I think now that we're closer now to this primary that will be taking place in June, I think Mike Sherrill comes out top. There's been a lot of polls that have been coming out where Mike Sherrill leads the pack by like 20 points. Well, not 20 points, but, Sherrill has, like, the clear majority of the poll. And you can even see by this article, where Baraka, Sherrill, and Fuller pull away from the pack, meaning that these three currently are having, some momentum on their side. But I've seen a lot of polls recently where Mike Sherrill has really come out on top. And it seems like Mike Sherrill is the guy. And if Mike Sherrill is the nominee in 2025, what do I think happens? Well, unlike Virginia, we haven't got any general election polls since the nominees are unclear on who they're going to be. But for the Republican side, I'm going to assume the former nominee for 2021 will probably be elected again for the Republican side, which would be Jack. And if Sherrill were, to run as the Democrat, I do believe the Democrats will probably pull off the win, in 2025. But it's going to be very, very close. It is going to be extremely close. Not a toss-up, but enough to be close. Giving Democrats the win they need on election night. And to be taking away, the Virginia governor election the Republicans won last time because Joe Biden was in office. The Democrats will be able to take Virginia back and keep New Jersey because Donald Trump is president. Because President Trump will probably be much more unpopular than before. But it's only April 2025. November of 2025. Where will he be? By then, will he be in double digits? And we've seen this with. Do they have Bidens? They have Bidens. I know they have Bidens here. I mean, we've seen that with Biden. I'm looking for Biden right now. There he is, Joe Biden. Okay, so we've seen this with Biden before, where in 2021, when these governor elections came up, Biden was already incredibly unpopular, right? In these couple months here, Biden, had a much more higher approval rating than Trump. But once the Afghanistan withdrawal happened, that was still much in people's minds. But more importantly, they had prices and inflation much more on their minds. And by the time the election came out on November 2nd, 2021, I don't think they did one. Okay, but Biden was clearly nearing a double-digit unpopularity. He was over 50%. He was, around 52 to 51%, somewhere around there. He was very unpopular, and that affected, the Democratic candidates that were trying to separate themselves from the Biden administration and the unpopularity and the dislike of the Biden administration because Virginians were frustrated. they were upset that they weren't able to pay, able to afford stuff at the grocery store, and they blamed the Biden administration. They blamed the incumbent party. We saw it in 2021. We saw it in 2024. And Democrats, yes, they had good elections, right? They had 2022, where abortion became the main narrative, and Republicans failed to adapt to that narrative. We also had 2023, which was based on governor elections, which weren't really, tied to the Biden administration. Andy Beshear, he was or still is a very popular governor, and he was able to win a Trump plus like 25 or 30 states by 5 points. He was able to do something a Democrat usually isn't able to, because he was such a popular governor and Kentuckians loved him. They approved of what he was doing as governor, and they reelected him by 5 points. And so those were some years where Democrats had good luck in a Biden administration, and it's why they felt so cocky, and it's why Biden decided to, keep running, because he was looking at all these, those 2 years where Democrats had a really, really good, election results, and that is why Democrats were really overestimating Donald Trump and Republicans. But now, maybe now the flip could be strict, where Republicans could be overestimating the unpopularity of President Trump, and they could be overestimating the opposition that comes with the Democratic Party. Because as we've seen with 2017, 2018, 2019, and even 2020, right, Democrats perform really well when they're the opposition to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is not a popular president. He's never been a popular president. He is usually overall a very disliked and unpopular president who has not once won 50% of the vote in an election. Right? In 2018, they had very good years in the governor elections. Andrew Cuomo was able to win by 23 points. Pennsylvania went to 17 points. Michigan went to 9 points. Wisconsin, still close, but still very good year for the Democrats. And I assume that this will only continue, once we get into, how it goes. But until then, we will see. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.